Only come anime girls, quivering clit, double-jointed pussy, fresh balls, elegant ejaculation. First the kiss, then the cum.
I have mixed feelings about this game. The Evil Within 2 wasn't directed by Shinji Mikami, instead being helmed by John Johannes, the guy who directed the DLC of the first game. If you'll recall, I quite enjoyed all three of them, and especially the story of the Kidman ones. This game's story, though, did not impress me nearly as much. It focuses on a series of journal entries in the first game that give Sebastian a bit of background, detailing him meeting his future wife at KCPD, having a child, the child's tragic death in a house fire, and Sebastian's wife leaving him convinced that the house fire wasn't an accident but a premeditated attack. It picks up 3 years after the original, and from the dialogue between these characters, it's pretty easy to tell things are going to be different. Sebastian is reasonably a bit unwell after the events of the first game. After getting out of the first stem, he was basically gaslit by a therapist into half believing it never happened while still subconsciously being unable to deny his experience. Sebastian spent the 3-year gap between games desperately searching for Mobius and gradually becoming more hopeless. The first scene does a really good job of establishing just how much of a mess he is, jolting awake from a nightmare after passing out at a bar. There's a familiar face sitting opposite him, and the game wastes no time setting up the plot. Mobius didn't stop working on STEM after the beacon incident, and did in fact kidnap Sebastian's daughter so she could be used as the host, or core as this game calls it. I'm already having a lot of problems with this new Sebastian and this new plot, but regardless, he gets kidnapped and essentially forced into another stem to save his daughter. Going from the first game to this one, there's a slight lack of polish. I was breaking boxes with my knife when I had an epiphany. Why don't I just break them with my telekinetic mind powers instead? Whenever you drop down from a high place, it does this. It's not a one-off thing either. This happens for pretty much every drop down. Alright, just gonna blow this guy up, no big deal. Oh. You okay, dude? I've shot him like 4 times. He's not moving, he's not dying, he's just stuck here forever. Jesus Christ. Alright, so I'm gonna throw this bottle to distract those enemies over there. Ah. It appears that it has somehow impacted the wall behind me while aiming over there, and now my position has been given away. Wait, no, actually I'm completely fine. The stealth mechanics are actually pretty eyebrow-raising. I'm gonna ice 3 of these dudes, shoot them all with my pistol, and this dude...
Don't care, don't care, don't care, still don't care. I don't
Okay.
care.
Okay, so this one requires a bit more context. I'm trying to use my communicator to resonate with this ghost from the past. Just bear with me, I promise I will explain what is happening, just give me a bit. But I can't pull it out, like I'm hitting the button and nothing is happening, so I go outside and hit the button, bam, he pulls it out, so I'm like, okay, I can use it now, right? I go back inside and hit the button, and nothing happens still. I literally had to reload a save to fix this. All of this to say that this is a AAA Bethesda product 4 years after its release. That's pretty rough. Game's frequently buggy. It was only game-breaking the one time, but still expect a lot of hiccups. Let's talk visuals. On a technical level, pretty much everything is a step up. The models looked pretty good before, but now they're almost scary good. The game wants you to know it too, like the amount of uncomfortable close-ups. On an artistic level, this game is fucking spectacular. No other word for it. I'm kind of a sucker for surreal imagery, and this is a game where you scavenge through a suburban town with other bits of town floating in the distance, all while being watched over by a giant, eldritch, cosmic horror camera monster. Here's the same town later on, and instead there's a giant Doom fortress. Like, the art team knew they were dealing with a virtual world where realism and fantasy could coexist, and they just went crazy. I like the first game's aesthetic of basically being like 12 hours of Saw imagery, but the sheer scope and variety of the areas in The Evil Within 2 completely blow it out of the water. I do have one small gripe. This is one of those games where nighttime is represented with just a blue filter. I think a sort of Kuriyami mode would have benefited this game immensely. Imagine this thing in pitch black darkness. The game as a whole is a lot more vibrant and colorful, and that's reflected in the enemies as well as the areas. No more fighting just dudes, enemies are much more distinct this time around. Now we got some big boys and the Pyro from TF2. Full stop, this is one of the prettiest horror games, no, scratch that. One of the prettiest games period I've ever played. It's an absolute treat. The audio though is a bit of a mixed bag. I normally would not ever suggest you do something like this for any game you play, but I'm making an exception for The Evil Within 2. I would highly recommend turning the music off completely for 2 reasons. The first reason is pretty subjective. I personally think the generic combat music is extremely annoying. The second reason is a lot more important. The music can kind of distract from how insane this game's audio mixing is. Really? That's it? You're gonna tell us to turn the music off because of audio mixing? Dude, shut up, you don't get it. This is the first game I've played in years that actually does sound propagation. That is to say, stuff sounds different depending on the environment you're in and how close or far away it is. It makes the game feel a lot more immersive and thus a lot more scary. I'm gonna play some clips of the same audio but in different places and distances. Listen to how the echo and reverb changes based on environment. It's a subtle effect, but it does wonders for immersion. But here's where it gets weird. The actual sound design is kinda hit or miss. Some monsters, like that tall gas boy you heard just a second ago, sound great. But at the same time, maybe it's just me, but the generic male dude enemies sound incredibly goofy. Like I said, could be me, but I just couldn't take them seriously. The guns and the combat by extension generally sounds very nice. The sniper rifle in particular is worth mention. It sounds like God punching a hole in some drywall after chugging a can of Monster. Very satisfying. Let's talk gameplay. I was really put off by a lot of the design initially. It's adopted the vibe of generic AAA mediocrity. Yeah, this game's open world now, with side quests and objective markers, and a more fleshed out crafting system involving a workbench, and what the heck? That's a straight up dialogue tree, what the fuck? There's no more matches, so now you just step on downed enemies. No tension of looking at a dormant body and wondering if it's gonna come to life either, because, well, I don't know if this is a bug or not, but they never ever wake up unless you bother them. A lot of this game's design I disagree with on paper, but in execution it's actually pretty good. Objective markers and dialogue trees are completely optional. You can safely play through the game ignoring both of them, thank God. The side quests in open world are designed in a pretty nicely organic way. The rewards for completing a side quest aren't given by people, but rather just out in the world. So you can go through the route of a side quest and collect the rewards for it without ever actually initiating it. Nice. Another cool thing, this game doesn't actually have that many side quests or side content in general, but it's more meaningful in less time. They didn't pull a Ubisoft or a Bethesda and completely shit this game up with tedious busy work, basically. My playthrough where I went for as much side content as I possibly could was about 15 hours, and none of it really felt padded or unnecessary. On top of that, the rewards are actually substantial. Good side quest design. Very good. There's also this communicator thing. It has a similar function to the Dead Space line of telling you vaguely where to go. With a certain upgrade, it can also pinpoint the location of dead Mobius agents that have loot on them. Pretty cool design-wise, because while you know the vague direction of these agents and what kind of rewards you'll get, you don't know what's around them.
Shit!
They put a lot more emphasis on a couple of things that were in the first game but very underdeveloped, namely using enemy melee weapons and stealth. Sometimes dudes will be carrying fire axes, and if you pick them up they replace your melee attack. You should really be using these things a lot. The first game's stealth was seemingly there out of obligation. There weren't any stealth-related upgrades, you see. But in 2, it's a lot more important. This could be because I was playing on a higher difficulty, but enemies are a lot more challenging to fight head-on. They appear in smaller numbers but are tankier, faster, and harder to hit due to how twitchy and erratic they are. Late-game enemies especially chunk you so hard, it makes direct combat much more of a gamble. Well, unless you're using this thing. Yep, the crossbow is back and even more ridiculous than last time. You'll love to see it. Bolts are a lot easier to stock huge amounts of, and it scales way harder with upgrades. It honestly kinda breaks the combat in some scenarios. Every bolt now has its own unique crafting component, so unlike last game where you needed to pick and choose your loadout due to all bolts sharing the same resource, now you just make all of them as you pick up components. Alright, they cost gunpowder as well, but it's completely negligible. I guess there's a bit of choice between do you use the gunpowder to craft the bolts or to craft, bullets. The ammo distribution in general is a bit weird. The game gives you plenty of handgun and shotgun ammo, but I only remember like 2 occasions where I got sniper ammo and didn't have to craft it. And even then, there are more guns than that you just don't get ammo pickups for. I never saw any assault rifle ammo and no flamethrower ammo either, but that one's more understandable. The crafting's fine, I guess, but I'm not sure why exactly it exists. Most materials are only used to make one thing or one kind of thing, and it doesn't seem unfeasible to just have the ammo or bolts littering the environment instead of gunpowder or condensers or whatever. You can make the argument of not gaining tangible resources from these pickups and needing to carry them to a bench increases tension, as you try and ration out your dwindling supplies between each bench visit. And I'm not saying that's invalid, but this game has a field crafting system that lets you make stuff anywhere, just less efficiently. Maybe it's because I've played a game where this open world spook and scavenge gameplay style is executed a lot better, but here, I don't know, I just didn't get the same vibe. In the first game, this system existed out of necessity and to somewhat balance the crossbow. In this game, it seems to exist more out of obligation. One new addition involving the workbench that works incredibly well, however, is the overhauled upgrade system. The upgrades have been separated a bit. Where the first game had you using green gel for basically everything, in this one, green gel for character upgrades, weapon parts for weapon upgrades, and carrying capacity upgrades from these optional satchels in secret areas. I actually like this system a lot. The upgrades are designed to be either pretty cheap or incredibly expensive. So if there's one big weapon upgrade you want, you can save the parts for it while still upgrading your character and vice versa. Nice. With this separation comes a lot more upgrades, and not just filler either. They're actually meaningful and unafraid to be extremely strong, often introducing entirely new mechanics. This game has a bullet time upgrade. Fuck yes. While I'm on this, there's something the first game did and this one does as well that I forgot to praise last time. It's something minor, but I think it's very important. When you upgrade something, where another game would say you do this thing slightly better or throw an incremental number at you that you don't have any frame of reference for, well, both of these games give you exact percentages of where you currently are and where you'll be after the upgrade. Fucking thank you. The angel statue lock and key system from the first game returns, less weird statue placement this time. That's kinda unfortunate. How could you not love the amazing crow balancing act? Oh yeah, and speaking of, Nurse Tatiana's back, and more of an actual character. Pretty cool, but she gets borderline fourth wall breaking, examining your upgrades and making suggestions.
You're getting powerful, but this place is dangerous and getting worse. There's no shame in using stealth now and again. Maybe I can help you with that.
It's a cool detail, but still kinda jarring. It feels a bit out of place with, the rest of the characters. We'll get there, as much as I don't want to. Oh yeah, something I forgot to mention about the guns is all of the side grade variants. The pistol and the shotgun have like 3 or 4 different versions that do different things. First of all, a quality of life feature. Upgrading one of these side grade variants upgrades all of them, thank God. The side grade variants are supposed to be just that, side grades. Take the pistols for example. There's the normal pistol that's very normal, the silenced pistol in case you have social anxiety, and the laser sight pistol for people who wish they were playing Resident Evil 4. These variants give more reason to go off the beaten path. Some of them are extremely powerful, but you gotta deal with some spooky shit to get them. I mentioned in the first video that I thought this game was scarier, and that's still very true, on basically every level. Even if the normal enemies sound silly as fuck, there's still a lot that this game gets right. Most of it is to do with the sound design, but the open world really helps. It does a fantastic job of making the world feel alive and out to get you with these tiny little set pieces, like walking into this alleyway and getting ambushed by the big saw on your way out. As far as scripted sequences go, the jump scares are back with a vengeance, but I found them a lot less annoying. They usually happen extremely quickly as like a just quick little gotcha moment, or they actually are built up very nicely.
Shit. What the hell?
Also, there's no way I could go through this section of the video without bringing up Anima. She's another one of those immortal stalker characters like Shade in the first game's DLC. Now, I don't like her visual design nearly as much as Shade, but her audio is fantastic. When she's patrolling, she'll sing a lullaby of Claire de Lune. She has a series of side quests associated with her that reward you with a revolver handgun from the first game for completing them. They're all forced stealth sections, which is kinda annoying, but the gun is worth it. But also, even just wandering around the open world, she can randomly pull you into a mirror reality where the only enemy is her and everything is very blue. To get out, you just walk away, but sometimes you'll end up just walking into another shitstorm. You know, it's times like this where I'm glad the game lets you run out of the aggro range of enemies. But you know what I can't run out of range of? This game's fucking story. God, that transition was fucking awful. Let's get this straight right now. A bad story beats a boring story all fucking day. I know I probably just kicked a beehive there, but let me explain. The Evil Within 2 suffers intensely from something I'm gonna call playable movie syndrome. There's so many cutscenes and so much exposition, it treats the player like they're a 5-year-old. I know the first game got a lot of flack for being basically impenetrable for the first 3/4, but I don't think fucking dialogue trees was the solution. It's not so much that this game is tell over show, it's more like tell, then tell again, then tell again, and then show anyway. It's annoying. Here's one of the characters, for example. This is Yukiko Hoffman. She's a Mobius team psychologist and mental health expert. You can tell because it's in her file, she outright says it or indirectly implies it like 5 times, and she psychoanalyzes Sebastian literally 10 seconds after they meet.
Lack of microexpressions and deflection. No verbal parroting. I've seen enough to know you're telling the truth.
Right. The team psychologist.
I take a lot of issue with the story because it took a really cool horror concept and used it as a vehicle for something insultingly generic. Like, big, strong, hairy dad man goes on a journey to save a estranged family member in a hostile environment. We get intense close-ups of all his emotional and physical struggles, and there will be some devastating plot twist at the end. Yeah, join the fucking club, buddy. Sebastian in this game is just insufferable, acting extremely hostile and passive-aggressive because he's a man at the end of his rope with nothing to lose. And like, I understand why, it makes sense in the context of the game, but that doesn't make it any less annoying. And speaking of annoying, there's another villain this time around. Generic, insane, crazy murderer guy type B-10 believes killing and torture is an art form. They really want you to know this guy's an artist because, first of all, this dude looks like Frederick Knudsen going through an emo phase. I do like how he's got a camera lens where his right eye should be. That's actually pretty fucking tight. His name is the most hilariously on-the-nose shit, Stefano Valentini. He's constantly talking at you about how cool he and his art is and how you're totally never gonna see your daughter again, and he's just boring. I would actually be willing to look past all this because Ruvik from the first game had a lot of these same traits, but he was a better villain due to having more backstory and a clear motivation that you could sympathize with while still hating his guts, and that was cool. But I can't look past it for Stefano because he just doesn't have as much development and... oh, fuck it, let's just do spoilers now. Skip to here if you don't want to hear me scream like a 5-year-old for a few minutes. Okay, if you're going to have a charismatic, in-your-face, really personal, confrontational villain for the player to build up a vendetta against, maybe don't kill him off halfway through the game and replace him with some other dickhead. This game has something of a villain crisis. Stefano could have been a more compelling character if he got more screen time, same for Theodore, his replacement. But the two of them are competing for main villain spot in a game that doesn't have enough of a runtime to support both of them, so neither of them are particularly interesting. If the scope was tightened and the focus was put all onto one of these two, they could have had a villain as compelling as the one in the first game. Theodore is a motivational speaker turned insane pastor with an army of lava golems and flamethrower-wielding pyromaniacs locked away in a giant fiery death castle. Stefano is an artist with a taste for torture porn and body horror and has command over this godless space creature from beyond the colors of time, and he resides in a haunted theater. Individually, these characters have the potential to be as engaging and memorable as Ruvik, if not more so, but there just wasn't enough time put into fleshing either of them out, so they come across more like one-dimensional generic bad guy characters when I think they could have been a lot more. You might be waiting for me to talk about the overarching father-save-daughter plot, but I'm not going to. There's nothing to talk about. I promise you it's all stuff you've seen in another game or a movie. No, all I really want to talk about is how Sebastian's wife turns into a giant cum monster at the end of the game. What the fuck? Might as well talk about the bosses as a whole. Couldn't cover them in the non-spoiler section because the boss fight formula from the first game has basically been completely done away with. The only time you fight bosses, they're used as major milestones rather than a fun climax to cap off a level. You remember in the first video when I mentioned that a lot of survival horror games had a problem where bosses were all the same? Well, let's break down all the major boss fights in this game, comprehensively. First there's Stefano. He teleports around you like a Dragon Ball Z character and commands his giant tentacle camera to attack you. To beat him, you shoot him until he dies. Second, there's Theodore, and I assume his boss fight budget was cut since he just throws a bunch of noticeably downgraded marketable dudes from the first game at you. First up is the Sadist, which was very much a shoot at it until it dies affair in the first game, and he has been downgraded from even that into a fucking QuickTime event. And for what? To rip off that one scene at the end of the 2013 Evil Dead movie? Second is the Keeper. His fight in the first game was more about solving the puzzle in the area before you died to poison, or, you know, the maniac with a hammer. Well, here you shoot him until he dies, but then he multiplies and you have to fight two at once, but then you just shoot both of them until they die and you're done. And third is Laura, and since this game doesn't have any matches, you just kite her into the same flame vent 3 times and the fight's over. Lame. Finally, we have Sebastian's wife as the aforementioned jizz creature who has glowing weak spots you have to shoot, otherwise you do no damage. great. And then we get the final cutscene where Sebastian's wife sacrifices herself to kill every single member of Mobius because of an extremely convenient brain chip inside everyone's head that can apparently just explode at the press of a button. Kidman betrays Mobius at the last second. Mobius Man tries to kill her by detonating her chip remotely, but psych, she took it out. Whatever the fuck that means. I do love the scene of this suit and tie angrily tapping on his phone and then spiking it into the floor. Since I don't see it bounce, I can only assume it teched the landing. Yo, let's go, Mobius phone. Hope to see you at EVO, dude. And then the game throws another curveball. Mobius Man had a chip as well? Apparently? Why? This is the Mobius Man. He owns this joint. Who's to stop him from just taking his chip out or never even getting it put in the first place? You know what, forget it. Sebastian escapes with his daughter in a literal and then they drive off into the sunset ending. Then there's a post-credits sequel tease because of course there is. And then after all that, we're left with New Game Plus and it's almost exactly like the one in the first game. Nope. So do I recommend The Evil Within 2? Maybe. It's absolutely beautiful, and the gameplay is super fun, but the story pissed me off on multiple occasions. At full price it's $40, but at time of making this video it's on sale for mega cheap until July 8th. Definite recommend at that price. I'd only get this game full price if you're like me and you just eat up survival horror in almost all its forms, or you don't have a problem ignoring the story and can just enjoy it for its gameplay. Otherwise, maybe give this one a pass. That's all for now. Next time I'll talk about a game that has eels, and incredible violence involving eels. See you then.
You are the bringer of death.